There we go. Recording is in progress. You will all have to be on your best behaviour. So we are a bunch of state nationals, just shooting the breeze, talking about whatever comes to mind. Um, Talking a lot today about government structure. I know that'll be on the agenda for sure, and whatever else comes up. Anything could happen, I guess. I'm just going to do a little screen share. I had nothing to do for a few minutes this afternoon, and I've got a little thing here to share with all the newbies, if I can get it to come up. So there it is, my little cartoon.
The river can never flow above it.
But anyway, I'm always like to share that or talk about, because we're going to talk about governance and how it's all upside down to what it should be at the moment. And so I tell my little story about the creator made man and we made governments and corporations, and why the heck are we even listening to them? So I got that little cartoon drawn this afternoon. You can see how well that went. Anyway, you've got a glimpse of it. We've 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 got a Facebook page up here now. Fred started it this afternoon. That was another thing that come out of our little breakfast chat this morning. So I'll stick it up on there, Fred, later on.
Thank you.
Righto. Who wants to lead the conversation? Who wants to start the fight?
Oh, I don't know that we're about fighting.
No.
I guess we had this chat because if you're a regular viewer and you like and want to subscribe, please feel free to hit the buttons and share it and all the rest of it. But if you are a regular viewer, you'll know that we normally have a guest, and we don't have a guest today because we thought we might just have a talk about TASA stuff, which we generally tend to stay away from. We are all on this particular chat. We are all Terra Australis State Nationals, which is TERRA, not terror, but Terra, and which pretty much means we've returned to the land and soil. So if you're new out there and you are sort of going, what on earth is she talking about? There are 3 areas of jurisdiction: land, air, and water. And most of us, for most of our lives, have lived sloshing around in maritime or in water jurisdiction. And that's not anyone's fault. It's the fault of GovCo and the Vatican and the Crown, who've been consistently defrauding people for centuries. However, we have returned to our birthright of back to living on the land and soil. And as such, we are state nationals. We are not citizens. We are not residents. We are not things. And the thing that we're finding, I think, a lot of us in TASA, is that at the moment we've recently settled on the actual structure of governance that we're going to go ahead with. State assemblies, which is what we're working to, which is the 1776 model, and Sue can absolutely give us a fantastic history on all of that, which she did this morning. But it pretty much is governance from the ground up, so that it means that the power for your area and your location is the people living in your location. It's not coming out of Canberra, it's not coming out of Melbourne or Sydney or wherever. It's coming from, Cooey Rup or Adelaide River or Gosford or Manjimup. Okay? It's coming from where you live. That's where the power comes for you and what goes on in your area. Yes, there are some things that are delegated to the National Assembly. And in our assembly structure, we would say that that's delegated down to the National Assembly because where we are, the power sits with us. We are at the top of the power tree in local assemblies. So there are some things that get delegated, things like natural resources, water, for example. It's very hard to say, well, that water belongs to, like particularly if you're talking the Murray-Darling, it's very hard to say that, that water belongs to this town. It doesn't. It runs everywhere. So there are some things that are national responsibilities, but most things you'll find are going to be soil responsibilities or local assembly responsibilities. Along with that change in perspective on how governance works is also a change in mindset and the realization that when governance is coming from us, we're not lawyers, we're not doctors, we haven't gone and done degrees with, the law firms in town like the politicians have. We're just men and women out here doing what we do. We're truck drivers and we're retail people and we're teachers and we're nurses and you know, we do all sorts of different things. So the paperwork and the processes that we work by don't have to resemble what they do in GovCo, okay, or the corporation that is pretending to be the government of Australia. And I think one of the big frustrations is that some people recognise that in TASA, and some people, and it's not anyone's fault because people do what they know, but we're not trying to rebuild government as in what we're all used to dealing with. They've got government. They've got their SOPs and their processes and their 3,700-page documents and their reams and reams of statutory laws and stuff like that. Their millions of laws. We don't need that. So there's a few things. We're not trying to take over government. That's their job. They are there to provide services to us. They are there to look after the roads and to collect the rubbish and to basically take care of the infrastructure. And they're doing a pretty poor job of it at the moment. And they keep crying, oh no, we've got no money. That's absolute garbage. What they mean is we've got no money that we can spare out of our own pockets to do the jobs that we're hired to do. The Assembly is here as living men and women on the land, and land law, when I mentioned law before, LAW, land, air and water, land law sits at the top. Land law is supreme to all of the other jurisdictions of law. So if we pass a law on the land in a land court, that actually overrides anything that they say in maritime, anything at all. So we can pass a law and it can say, okay, from now on, the local assemblies have jurisdiction or they have the ability to instruct local councils. And so we can go to local council and say, fill up the potholes. We're not taking over the local councils. I don't want to go and fill up the potholes. I don't want to dig ditches or mow grass. That's their job. Our job is to say, do your job properly. So we just want to talk around some of the misconceptions that people have, because talking to people out there, we're finding that there are some misconceptions and there are some misunderstandings. And this is not anyone's fault. This is just because we are a very new organisation. We're making it up, not making it up as we go, but we're learning as we go, would be a better way to say it. We are taking our cues from America, but we are not America. So we're doing some things a bit differently. So we thought we'd talk around that today, and we'd talk around the fact that we've been so thoroughly indoctrinated, all of us. I remember Sue and I, way back, we were trying to figure out a piece of paperwork. And Sue said, you know what? We're in charge of us. We're sovereign. We've got on there that this is what we mean it to be. So what do we mean it to be? How do we want to say this? What do we think a reasonable person would understand? So we did. We just went ahead and went, okay, this is what we think it should be. And we did that. And we can. And it doesn't have to be hard. And I think there's a lot of people at the moment trying to make things hard because that's what they think we need to do. And with that, I yield. You're on mute, Wayne.
Very good. Very good. You've covered that pretty well. The first thing we have to realise is that we have to start with self-governance. I think we have to realise that we're not here to be bossed around and used up. Self-governance is something that we all have to learn. We all have to realise the power that we've got. The power that we've got once we reconvey back to the land and soil. Once you get self-governance sorted in your own head, and the fact that we shouldn't be obeying statutes and we shouldn't be told what to do by a corporation, once you get that sorted in your head, you'll start to get an idea of where we're sort of at with all of this. But let me tell you, building a governance structure is not an easy thing. So the one that we chose, which we call the 1776 model, was the de jure government model in America, and it was started in 1776 and it ran until about 1860 or 1861, I think, when it was usurped. No, is that right, Sarah?
Talk to Sue.
Sue, correct me, please.
No, you had those dates right, Wayne. That's right. It went from 1776, and then that was the result of their Revolutionary War, where they separated themselves from Britain. And by doing that, they didn't come under the umbrella of them anymore. And so really America was a great big experiment where the people themselves said, we don't need kings, we don't need rulers, we are going to self-govern. And so that structure was really set up so it was truly governance by the people for the people. And then that ran fairly successfully, although they contracted some of their government services back to the British for naval services and also back to the Vatican for municipal services, until the Civil War came about, which, as you said, was in around 1860, 1861. So you were spot on.
Thanks, Sue. So the other thing about that governance structure was, and the reason that we've chosen to put something together that's very similar, is because when they contracted to the British Territorial Corporation and when they contracted to the Vatican, they became internationally recognised. So our governance structure is going to be very similar, which means it will be internationally recognised from the beginning, because that type of government has been used and well used before. So that was the thinking behind following and like that structure. It might not be exactly the same. It might be tweaked a little bit here and there because, as Sarah said, we're not America. They've got 50 nation states and a federal government to oversee that. We haven't got a federal government. We are the federal government, if you like. We're a nation state. The nation being the people and the state being the geographical area. So Terra Australis is the geographical area. So that's the basis for choosing that model. So once we get this up and running, we have international recognition immediately. Anybody got anything to add? I'm losing my voice.
Well, I think one of the things that we can add is that, look, we are the reason we're quite different from America, and I know that some people will have heard this and some people will not, so I'm just going to put it out there. When America started, they had, Virginia was their first nation state, if you like. And what happened is that you had a bunch of people come over from, I think it was England or Ireland or Scotland, came over and they settled in part of the big landmass that we all know as America, and they were there. And as Wayne said, a nation is a group of people that have similar culture. And so they were all from the same kind of place, and they went, right, this is our nation. We're going to call it Virginia. Okay. And they put boundaries around that. They said, okay, we can kind of control the territory. This is our jurisdiction. This is our territory out to, here. And then someone else from, I don't know, pick a country, any country, Germany, Poland, wherever, came along and they settled on another part of the landmass known as America. And they said, right, this is going to be Ohio or New Orleans, or is New Orleans? No, yeah, New Orleans. No, that's a city. But, Mississippi or Nevada or whatever. So they were different people from different cultures and different countries coming in as nations. And so that's why America is 50 nation states, because they are different national bodies coming together from all over the world, coming together, and they made countries. They staked out a geographical area and they called it their country. That was their nation. So we've got nation being the people, state being the geographical area. So it's a nation state. Australia didn't have that. Not once not once Cook landed here. Okay. Prior to that, absolutely nation states. I've got no issue with the originals and what went on there. And I recognise that we have a history that most people on this country don't understand and don't recognise, and are very not through desire, but just because we just haven't had the schooling or educational knowledge to talk about it knowledgeably. However, we can only go on what we know, and we know from Cook onwards, it was only one nation that settled here. It was the English. Okay, and there were various reasons for that. The biggest one being that America had just won their fight against the Poms or the Brits and said, get out. And so the Brits had nowhere to dump their convicts, and so they needed somewhere else to put them. So, we discovered Australia and it's vacant. So, or terra nullius. So we'll just dump everyone there. But we had colonies settled all over the place, but we were from one nation. So Australia is one nation state. We're not, all different nation states. So that's how we are different in some ways. We don't have the complexity of governance that America does. And that's a blessing, I think. Because it just means that it's a lot simpler for us to stand and or seat when we get to electing and things like that, and we seat a governance system or an assembly. It's a lot easier for us to do that. It doesn't mean, though, that we can't change further down the line. We could turn around and go, well, okay, we want to reintroduce the states, or we would like to introduce regions rather than states. And I think regions might potentially be a really good idea. We already have regions in Australia that people are familiar with. We've got the Kimberley and we've got the Wimmera and the Mallee and Far North Queensland. We know in ourselves we've got different regions. Northern Territory, they've got Greater Darwin, but then they've got Arnhem Land and they've got the Daily Waters, and they've got Central Desert. So there's, in some of those regions, I know where Sue and I live, just up the road, we've got the Sapphire Coast, which is kind of New South Wales, Victoria, across the border there. They would be good together in a region. And regions are where, they have very, very similar issues. All of the towns in that region have similar issues. So they're all, like in the Sapphire Coast region, they've got one road in, one road out. They've got water, a strip of sand, a little bit of, buildable dirt, and then they're just high country, high timber. So it's really hard to sort of move further in. So they've got some fairly unique issues that they have to deal with, but they know and understand those issues. And so as a region, they would deal very well together because they would be able to say, yes, we know what's going on in this place. So later on, we might get to that. At this stage, we are not big enough to be able to do that. So that's something that potentially might happen further down the line. I yield.
You've got your hand up. I just want to let the viewers know that Fred's having trouble with his camera, and we didn't want to kick him off because he has got some knowledge, and now that he's got his hand up, we'll find out how much knowledge he has got, I guess. Go for it, Fred.
No, I don't know about knowledge, but just an opinion. In any case, it's one of the things that, having worked in contracting in the Northern Territory and all the rest of it, this regions idea, I believe, has really got merit. I mean, they used to release the money up here right in the middle of the wet season. You can't do anything in the wet season up here, whereas if it was like we could operate up here at different times of the year where they couldn't do in West Australia or anywhere else in Australia, you know. So the idea of having regions, I like that quite a lot. Makes sense, I think.
So, Fred, what do you mean by they released the money? I'm from Victoria. What does that mean?
When they were the government, what do you call them? Government agencies up here put in we want a house built at Numbulwar, or we need a new school over in Aliangula. That had to be approved. So when the budget come through and then they release the money for it, it's in the wrong time of the year here. It's in the middle of the wet season. So
does that leave plenty of time for a bit of corruption until they actually get anything done?
It accidentally goes wandering all the time. There was in the day when it used to cost about $150 to build $150,000 to $200,000 to build a Aboriginal house up here. There was one house in a place called Nooka, and it wound up at $500,000 and still hadn't gotten a roof on it. So it shows you how much it goes wandering. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Seems a lot more than that's wandered out in gas fields and stuff, but
yeah, probably. More likely a bit more for the leaders of the area. A lot of them, they didn't put local leaders in. They always used from another clan. They made them the leaders because they wouldn't argue. So, yes, there's ways and means, I suppose.
A little bit of history there. So let's have a look at how do you build a governance structure. Well, we've talked about the structure and the de jure government of America, and so there's the blueprint. But that was the easy bit. So how do you build it? Well, you have lots and lots and lots of meetings. Then you have more meetings, and then when you've had all them, you have a few more. And we've got let's just say it's not easy. We've never done this before, and we're all learning, and all the people on this call have all been involved in it, and many others in many different ways, and we probably still haven't got enough people to do what we have to do. But some of it is organising the segments, if you like, of a governance structure, the assemblies, the pillars, the committees, and each one of them has to have a plan around it, how it operates, what it does, what paperwork does it need, who does it report to. Would anybody like to take the floor and build out a bit on that little mental picture that I'm trying to build there? It's not an easy job, and we've got Donnie. You've had a lot to do with the Treasury Committee, and Ray, you've had a lot to do with the Elections Committee. Fred's Land Recording Office, and the others, Sue and Sarah and Gokul, are all involved in various different ways. So who would like to take the lead and tell us about how much fun it is to set up a governance structure?
I'll start. I think the hardest thing for me is getting through to people that discussion and even dissent is not a bad thing. And that we can't do this in a hurry. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, nothing's happening. And And I would say to those people, well, actually, there's a lot happening. It's just that it's happening, on meetings that happen on a Thursday night or on a Sunday night or, pick a night really, or a weekend day. And it's happening with discussions like this one. And there's other people around, having discussions. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything, and that's not a bad thing. And I think this is the other thing that people are very, very frightened of saying, actually, I think that's wrong. I think there's a better way to do it. Or I really disagree with that point of view. And that tends to be seen as a personal attack a lot of times because we've been so wokeified and so snowflaked, all of us. Again, over the last 10 years, there's been a really good job done on anyone disagreeing with anything, that we are very hesitant to go, you know what, no, I think there's a better way to do that, or actually, I think we could do it a different way. There's also, and this is where that self-governance, and you talked about it, Wayne, is the first thing about self-governance is governance of the self. And knowing when maybe you might have made a mistake and go, you know what, I think we could do it differently, or I think I was wrong. I was wrong this morning. I put that call out with you and Go Cool last night and I got things wrong. And I'm going to have to sit down with Sue tomorrow and actually do an amendment, which is fine because we're all just normal men and women, just working it out as we go, and we make mistakes, and we've got to be able to turn around and go, oh, I got that wrong, without going, and I'm a terrible, horrible, pathetic person for doing that. No, I just got something wrong. And, and now I stand corrected and I can move forward. So that's the first part of it, I think. The second part of it is being able to discuss different points of view and having other people have the courage. And this is the other thing. A lot of people don't have the courage to speak up. They don't have the courage to use their voice. They might have really good ideas, but they don't want to open their mouth. And that can be really frustrating to deal with. And I think the third thing, as I've said, my frustration is that people are wanting to make things a lot harder than they need to be. And the only other thing I'd add into that, and Go Cool might have something to add to this, is that we have to remember that every single one of us is volunteering this. We're all working. Most of us are working full time. And this is an extra job that we've taken on. And we're all volunteering. And sometimes the expectation is that we're going to have all these things like they do in government. And we're not government. We're a bunch of people who are standing there going, government, you got too much red tape and too many rules, and we're actually trying to cut through that. The way to cut through it is not to make more red tape and rules of our own. It's to keep it really simple, that normal people can understand. So, and dealing with people who are giving of their own time and efforts requires a different mindset, I think. If you're a coordinator or a committee, chair or something like that, there's a different way of approaching that. And I think Go Cool can certainly talk to that because he's dealt with volunteers and stuff before as well. I yield.
Would you like to talk to that Go Cooler, or?
I'll have a go.
Okay.
My understanding is this structured business is not as complex as we all think it is. We come in with an idea that there's a daunting thing ahead of us. Like it's massive. When you look at what GovCo done, you look at that and say, wow, how do you get your head around that? It's really no different to running a household. You've got income, you've got expenditure. I shouldn't use the word income, should I? You've got money coming in or whatever, and you work it out. Try not to get into debt, which is exactly what GovCo don't do. They do the opposite. They try and see how much debt they can get everybody into. And working as a volunteer organisation, we need to change our views. Our values now appreciative of everybody that helps. We have a, what's the term? Allowance. We allow people to be different. We allow people to do things in the way they want to do it. we allow them the scope, maybe, to come to their own conclusions. And having difficult conversations is just that. It's just a difficult conversation. And if we just can grasp the idea that, okay, this might...
We've lost Go Cooler in mid-stride. So what Go Cooler's talking about there...
I just got disconnected. Right?
Yeah, do you want to continue, mate? Yep.
Yeah, so I was... Where was I now? I was talking about, was it having a difficult conversation? So having a difficult conversation means just doing that and just talk through it. Don't get angry. There's no need for anger. Listen to what the other person got to say. Contribute your point of view. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication. I find that an interesting book because we use words that trigger other people. We don't even realise we're doing it. So I guess it's a matter of learning how to communicate better, understanding that other people may not have the same idea, but respecting their point of view and collaborating and trying to come to a conclusion that everyone's happy with. I yield.
Yeah, you're right. And we've been taught from kids that it's bad to be wrong and you have to win. You know, we all set out to win. Well, what we really should set out for is to get the best result for everybody. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference in the way that you behave. And the difference between what we're setting up and GovCo is that they've got a piece of paper for every occasion so that they can hold you responsible. We're doing it the other way around. We're saying self-governance, we are responsible. And it's just a question of you made a mistake, fess up and fix it and get on with it, you know. So, and what Sarah was saying before about people not wanting to speak up, we do need more people to speak up. We've got untold amount of skills and knowledge out there that people haven't brought to the table because it's too scary. Well, scary for me too, but I think comes a time when you realise, you know, what's at stake. Do we want to keep living under corporate governance, being told what to do every minute of the day, being controlled, blamed, bloody robbed? Do we want to live like that, or do we want to be free and have some control over our destiny and the destiny of future people? And I know where I'm at, and it does make you open your mouth and have something to say every now and again. I can tell you when you see the difference and you know that something needs to be done. So that's where we're at. Anybody else got anything to add on? Yeah, Donna, go for it.
See, there you go. There's the difference. We're volunteers, right? GovCo is a private company and they're all employees and they all get paid to do their job. And the reason they keep taxing us more and more and wanting more and more money from us is to pay their wages, right? And they get a lot of money from us, not just from our tax, from our SESTA-QV trust, all of that. Our taxes don't cover any of their expenses. It's all from our SESTA-QV trust, if you work out how that works. So that's the difference, is that they're all employees. They don't have the well-being of anything at heart because they're just out for their money and their wages and more and more and more and more. But having said that, they've already got all of their systems in place and they've got all of their infrastructure. They've got all of their systems and it works very well. Like, it works very well for them, not for us. I work in it every day and I guarantee you I would think every day, geez, this bloody works well.
when I log on to the ATO portal to do someone's BAS and a little thing comes on my phone and it's like, this is a bloody good system. And it really does work well for them, not for us. But we don't need to reinvent that wheel. We just need to tell them when we've got the money and we're going to fund them, we need to tell them this is a service that we want. This is what we don't want. And you can provide that service because you've already got the infrastructure there. Report to us on a periodical basis and let us know if that service is being provided properly, how we want it in accordance with our policies and our, all of our values. And if it's not, then they don't get funded. That way, then all the people that work for GovCorp in the lower areas that do the work are still getting paid. So it's just like now when I do the books for a not-for-profit, they put in a funding submission, a grant submission, a funding request, whatever we're going to call it. That and the government, GovCorp, they've already done their estimates for the next 3 to 5 years anyway. That is what they submit to. Now I'm just going to talk in our terms. You guys can translate it into freedom language if you know it. I don't. So they already do that and they give it to the federal government to get their warrant, which is their money for the next financial year to spend. And they've already got that in place. So, we had a conversation about this the other day about the Treasury and what we actually do, because we don't actually make any decisions. By the time anything comes to us, the decision to yay or nay has already been decided. It's been decided by the Inga group. So if we get a funding request, it's already approved or not approved. So we just carry out the actual process, the payment or whatever. So, that's how it will work in us on a larger scale, is that everything will already be decided by the people before it gets to us to process. That's the way I see it. Anyway, that's my interpretation. So, yeah, we're just quite small at the moment. And until we get the funding to fund GovCorp, we're not, we've got to have that infrastructure in place, but we're not huge. It's there ready and it can be upgraded when the time comes. So
I think
story, Donna. Yep.
The other thing just to add to that is when Donna says that Inga makes the decisions, Inga is all of us. It's all of us. It's not just a group of people that, meet in a private meeting. Inga, I know at the moment they've got some restrictions on the General Assembly because of voting issues. And because there are various rules around who is able to vote and who is not able to vote on what issues. And we're sort of going to be working on that on the implementation committee, which is starting up on Monday. So if anyone wants to get onto the implementation committee, the links are in the welcome chat under general, Monday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. But the INGA is the Interim National General Assembly. So it's not an exclusive group of people. Anyone is welcome at the General Assembly. If you are having a face-to-face General Assembly in your town hall at wherever you live, anyone can walk through that door and is allowed to and should be allowed to. The only time you would eject a person is if they are making a public nuisance of themselves or, causing problems and just being a pain. The only other restriction around that is that if someone is a federal employee, so they get paid by any form of government, so local, state, federal, whatever, they just need to declare that. Okay, so some people, essentially what that means is if they're getting paid by government, then they technically have government as their master. They can't also then be answerable to another master. So they can't serve on a committee, at an assembly level. It doesn't mean they can't have a say. You can absolutely have a say. You just can't be elected into a role. Okay, but you can have an opinion. There's no problem at all with you being a teacher and also saying to your General Assembly at your local level, no, I don't agree with that, or I think this should be done. You're absolutely allowed to have an opinion and you're encouraged to do so. So
That's their sovereign side, is having
correct.
that opinion, yeah. Because
Yeah.
we're all both.
That's right. And we all wear a couple of hats all the time. Mums are particularly good at that. Mums know about hats. You know, one minute you're a counsellor, the next minute you're an adjudicator, the next minute you're getting a call from your husband and suddenly you're a cook. So, you know, we all know about wearing hats. But General Assemblies, going back to that, anyone can attend a General Assembly. There's no real issues around that. At the moment, the one that we have online on a Tuesday night, there's a few things, just as I said, around the voting and eligibility, because sometimes they do polls on those meetings. So we're trying to vet people at the moment. I believe that's what Christina and Carol are trying to do. But otherwise, the General Assembly is all of us.
That it is. Thanks, Sarah. While you're speaking of voting and that sort of stuff, Ray, I'm going to put you right on the spot. I love doing this. You've had a lot to do with, well, you're just about the election committee on your own. I know how much work you've done and I've seen some of what you've produced. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of what's involved in the elections?
Yeah, there are so many documents and some are quite lengthy. And they've got manuals as well as forms with all the processes, but it's comprehensive in terms of it gives a manual of detailed descriptions of what to do before an election, during an election, after an election. Then there's a basic manual off that gives just the main guidelines. Then you've got your forms. You've got your ballot forms, the nomination forms, elector verification guidelines and forms, that sort of thing, the committee charter, etc. Where it's at now is that I had put, there were 13 questions that I needed assistance with in order to finish that paperwork. And I put it up there on Terra Australis States Assembly or State Nationals, I can't remember which website, which Telegram group. It was there for a month. I got some feedback, and that's why I want to call this final elections webinar next Sunday, so we can collate the results, finish that off, and then palm it off to, well, whoever next, whether it's Inga or whatever, and people can have a look at the finished product then, if they will, because it's quite lengthy, but that'll be the end of it. And now that the structure is near being finalised, we can run elections and stand in assembly. That would be the dream finish. I yield.
Sounds good to me.
I was just going to add there, like for anybody new listening to this conversation, we've already stated that we're not government. We'd like to be self-governing, though. And so we're talking about voting here, and people might be wondering, well, what are you voting for? Obviously, we're not voting for representatives because we believe that we should present our own views and not have someone else do it on our behalf. So it's probably worth explaining to people that the whole purpose of setting up an assembly structure is to organise ourselves into a good communication flow from the people, the will of the people, individually, and then in their local areas, and then to a national level. It's just the communication flow of what the people want and what issues they're having to get it to one body that can then deal with it again. So that you want to get your issue of bad roads in your area through to the body that we're going to vote in, to then turn around and instruct the government on our behalf to do their job. So really the assembly itself is about setting up a communication flow structure that allows everyone to have their view. We're not voting people into positions of power. Those people are putting their hands up to volunteer to work, really, on our behalf, but not to make decisions for us, just to implement our decisions. So I sort of look at it as if, if you've got 27 million people on the continent and they're all putting their views forward, it's a bit like an organism with 27 separate cells. And each cell is part of a different organ in their own area. And so the communication needs to flow through the central nervous system, being the communication system, to the brain of the outfit, if you like, to send the feedback loop, back to the organ to tell it what to do. And that's how I see the assembly structure, as a communication structure, not a power structure. So those people that we will elect in are people who put their hands up to volunteer for those positions, to say, yes, I'll be the secretary and I'll keep good notes. Yes, I'll maintain the treasury and we'll keep open books for everyone to look at. And I'll be the main chair of the National Assembly to keep the structure organised for that flowing of information. Anyway, I yield, but I just thought it was worth putting that out there for the new people listening. Well, we're not voting in a government. We're actually looking for volunteers to put their hands up in what runs like a committee structure of volunteers. And that's why we have to become so good at self-governing and communication with our fellow man, and try and avoid the pitfalls of just disagreeing disagreeably. We're allowed to disagree, but we have to learn to do it agreeably. And that's where the self-governance and the self-responsibility and the self-growth needs to come in, so that we can run this nation responsibly and for the good of all. Anyway, I yield.
Thank you, Sue. That was very well said. So
Hey,
basically,
Wayne,
yes, Fred.
I was just on that. I was getting these ideas as Sue was speaking there.
Yep,
just
go
sort of
for it.
thinking. One of the things that sort of, I guess, Wild West days, and even up here in Darwin in the old days, town hall system, where you've got volunteers and people can go and use the town halls and that. Just sort of thinking along the lines where a town hall set up in Darwin or wherever, once we seat an assembly, it needs to be in a building, doesn't it? So would what you might say, a soil jurisdiction town hall, something like that. Is that what we're aiming at?
Pretty much. If anyone's watched Gilmore Girls, maybe they haven't, but if you have
No.
watched Gilmore Girls, they have a town hall meeting once a month. And, so Joe might want to put up a shed near his fence. And he goes to the town hall meeting. He says, I want to put up a shed. And someone says, where on the fence? Because they're Joe's neighbour. And he says, wherever. And they say, no, because you're going to block the shade or block the sun that I need for my veggie garden. And then they go, oh, well, okay. And he goes, well, what if I put it further up the fence? And everyone goes, oh, yeah, that should be okay. Yeah, no worries. So it's literally that simple.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
what I'm
hard.
thinking, when you start thinking about volunteers and all that. Yeah, that's true. But we're still only truck drivers and
Yeah.
whatever, seamstresses and so forth. But we've just got that ability to rule for ourselves, take our own responsibility into our own hands and then govern.
Well, if you think about it, right at the moment, I was talking to Wayne about this the other day, talking about a shed. And we can talk about this in a minute, but if you haven't noticed that government is failing badly all over the place, you haven't really been keeping your eyes open, I would suggest. There are many, many signs to show that government around the world is collapsing under the weight of its own hubris. And we can talk about some of that in a minute. But right at the moment, if I want to build a shed in my backyard, I have to get permission from the council to have a plan to build a shed. Then I've got to go and get a permission. If the plan gets approved, I've then got to get another permit to actually go and find someone to build the damn shed. And if for some reason the money runs out or I get sick or whatever and the permit runs out, I've then got to go and get another permit, which has already been approved, but I've got to go and do it all again. Then I've got to go and approach someone to build the shed for me because I need the appropriate insurance and blah, 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 blah. And by this time, we've paid out an enormous amount of money to plan and get a permit to build a shed. So we've had to get 2 lots of permission to start this thing without even breaking ground. And then we've got all of the add-ons for the shed. In a normal world, I should just be able to go, gosh, I want to build a shed. Okay, I'll just go and get some timber and I'll get a bag of cement or a couple of bags of cement and I'll call my brother and we'll just knock a shed up. That's how it should be. We shouldn't have to go through all this palaver just to knock up a 6x6 shed out the back.
Yeah.
Like, truly and honestly, it's bonkers. And
the most you do, Sarah, is probably talk to your neighbours and say, look, we're going to put a big shed there. Are you fine with that?
that's exactly right. And as I said, the neighbours would say, well, no, that's going to block off my veggie garden. And you go, oh, yeah, okay. And so that's the only really planning permission you need is off the literally people around you that it's going to affect.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
It's all about money, Sarah, because every time you do that and you get a permit, you have to fork out some money to GovCorp, right? It's all about money. And then what they'll do is they'll orchestrate a devastating cyclone. So now they've got an excuse because you have to have certain engineering points so that your house doesn't blow away if we orchestrate another one. So there's more money that you've got to fork out.
Sounds like you've been down that pathway, Donna.
I think Tracy was our original freaking harp thing. I reckon it was.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. There's a lot about Tracy that gives rise to quite a number of questions. But anyway, that's another subject for another day.
Now we've got all of these building restrictions in place, and every single step has to have an engineer's report, and that costs a fortune. So yeah, more money.
More money. Ray, you got your hand up?
That makes perfect sense. It is a business because we've got to think about it. Since the World Bank took over all the countries, and countries are just corporations, and the main aim of a corporation is to make a profit. So it is all money making, I yield.
So true. That's the situation we find ourselves in. I'd just like to step back a little bit to what Sue was talking about there before. What we have to remember in all of this is that all authority stems from the people. Now, if somebody is elected into a role, there will be a piece of paper which will outline what they are and outline what they're not. It will outline what they can do and it will outline what they can't do. If they have delegated power, that power is delegated from the people, and they can't delegate on that power. It can never be more than one step removed. That authority can't be more than one step removed from the people. So a delegate or an elected official is actually locked in to a position, and they can't, if they're caught mucking around and trying to delegate, say, I've got an elected position and I'm allowed to do this much, and I think, oh, Go Cool's doing nothing, I'll delegate it to him. I can't do that because then he's a delegate that arose from a delegate, and you can't do that. He at that point he's not answerable to the people. So all authority stems from the people, and that is the basis of the whole thing, really. That's the basis of it, and all authority stems from the people, and it cannot be any other way. I yield. Anybody got anything else to add?
Yeah, while you're talking about that, someone that is elected into a position, once you've reconveyed and corrected the assumption that you're a municipal or a British territorial citizen and that you are literally a state national, so you gain your nationality from the land on which you were born, But once you're elected into a position, we call that a state citizen.
That's right.
So that you're literally becoming a servant of the people. I just thought, and these terminologies can get very confusing when all we know is what we've grown up with in the legacy system. And that one even there confuses even a lot of people within TASA, like what makes a state citizen. It's literally someone who's volunteered into a role or been elected into a role at that point. So I thought it was worth just clarifying that.
Thank you, Sue. I think we're going to do a video on that, Sarah, aren't we? On just that.
Yeah, we're going to, with the implementation committee, which, as I said, we're setting up, and the first meeting's Monday night, we're going to be diving into all of these things. So there'll be a lot of subcommittees talking about the definitions between, you know, state national and state citizen, and what each can and can't do, and what rights people have at what levels, and who can be eligible for different roles and stuff like that. So that'll definitely be one subcommittee. And I would probably suggest that we need a subcommittee just to work out a glossary so that we know when we're talking about, when we use terms, we know what we're using, because there's a lot of crossover in some of the terminology. But to get back to the main crux of it, yes, on the assembly, remember, you guys might not remember, but I remember back in the day, and I just squeaked in before I think they took it away. I remember you had to do an exam to be a public servant. You had to do the public servant exam to see whether you were of good moral character and you had the right qualifications to serve your country.
Did you make it?
Did anyone pass?
Yeah, I did mine, 1979. My dad's paradigm got into the government. Was in there 20 years in admin finance. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to do your exam, public service exam. Yep.
Yeah. I think it had disappeared just as I was finishing up high school. But yeah, so that was back in the day where we actually expected our public servants to, you know, service. Not like now, we just expect our public servants to all be corrupt.
So are you telling us they don't do that exam anymore?
No.
So do you think the fact that it's the morality level that's dropped that may be giving us some of the problems we have with government?
I wouldn't be at all surprised. One of the theories, it's interesting, Donna brought up Cyclone Tracy. One of the theories that I've seen floating around is that after Tracy, because anyone who is aware of the fact that the Northern Territory is a territory still actually under federal rule, okay? It doesn't have, although it purports to have a state government, it really sort of doesn't. It comes under the federal government. And the story I heard someone put out there was that after Cyclone Tracy, it was such an absolute basket case because it was just, you know, it was like no man's land and, you know, the Wild West frontier all in one. So all of the politicians that were so bad that they were getting thrown out of all of the state governments elsewhere basically went and hid out in the territory and then started up government there because everyone was too busy involved in like rebuilding their lives to actually take a long, hard look at these characters and go, are you sure you should be here?
Yeah,
And that's what happened. You got the worst of the worst up in the territory.
Sounds like a true story.
That's pretty much what happened. And they got embedded up there. And now the people on this call who are from the territory, and there's 3 of you, and I've lived up there, you would be very well aware that there are a lot of people making a lot of statements about what goes on in government up there. And those people have not been sued. They've not been taken to court. So everything they're saying is true, you would think. And I mean, we know Victorian government is bad, and you guys from WA would know that WA is pretty bad. The territory, they've not even been hiding it at all. They just are who they are, and they are just running the place like the mob.
Yep.
Mates Club.
It is. But what's really sad about that is it's the same all over the world. It's the same anywhere you go, you've got the same issue. And I think going back to what I said before, if you haven't seen the fact that government around the world is falling apart, you just haven't been looking. There was an article I saw in a paper not long ago, and someone said, they were saying to their mate, well, and their mate was saying, oh, when is this collapse that they keep talking about going to happen? And the guy writing the article said, are you not looking? Because it's like happening now. And they were like, well, what do you mean? And he said, what people are waiting for is they're waiting for it to happen to them. But if you actually take a long, hard look, it's happening right now, all over the place. And there are signs of it everywhere.
Yeah, it's a gradual thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a gradual thing, I think. It's and once you're aware, you notice stuff. But if you're not aware, you don't even realise something's going on.
Right.
Ray.
Yeah, just very quickly, I've had that too, that experience that Sarah's been talking about. But the thing is, I have this feeling that with all the chaos that's going on, this is the trickle. The flood is still to come, I yield.
Yeah, that's probably a good description too, I think. Righto.
Well,
So we've been
what's
going for a
happening
bit
in
over
Spain.
now. What's that?
Look at what's happening in Spain.
Yeah, what is
Have you seen
happening
that?
in Spain? I saw bits, but can you explain? Because you obviously know a bit more about it than I do.
From what I've seen on Instagram, there's hundreds of thousands of military-aged men have arrived in Spain, and that in 24 hours,
Wow.
they've just destroyed the place. They're looting supermarkets, they're burning places, it's just chaos. They're going to the toilet in the street. If you get to see anything on it, it's just disgusting. And there's hundreds and thousands of them, so they can't control them. People are hiding in their homes. It's bad.
Something
if it's
like
real,
that.
but it looks like it's real. It looks like it can't be, faked or AI. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
Something that big, Donna, doesn't happen organically. It sounds like it'd have to be planned, wouldn't it?
But they could swim there. They could swim there I think from Morocco or somewhere. I don't know, but there's 20 something kilometers. I mean, that's not far, really. They swam there, a lot of them. 9 of them died on the way, so they must have drowned. But yeah, this is just what I've seen on Instagram, so don't take it for gospel, but investigate, because something bad's happening in there.
Well, it's no different to, and Ray, I know you've got your hand up, but it's no worse than what they were doing when they had all those immigrants being trucked in by George Soros into America. And he was paying people, and they were like hiring buses to get them up there, and then they were streaming across into Texas and the southern states on the border, and they're just completely overwhelming the infrastructure. We are very lucky in some ways that we are an island nation.
Yes.
Having said that, hasn't completely stopped things, because we're getting, what did they say, the equivalent of Newcastle every week or something ridiculous like that. It's bonkers.
Some of the comments on that were, Albo will take them. It's bad.
Okay.
But yeah.
We don't want any more fear porn. Right.
Yeah, I saw a bit of that this morning, and I guessed what it is, and I saw it. I've saved the article. There's no doubt in my mind that this is the Israeli government punishing the Spanish government because they've been the most vocal on the situation in Palestine. And speaking of immigration and all of that, this is one of the things that's on my Telegram channel, that we complain about the immigrants, and I can understand we've got so many. But the thing is, Palestine is probably the place that's had the most immigrants in such a short period of time, overrunning the place. And of course, that is by design, and that's with the backing of the Zionist powers. I yield.
Yeah, I think what we have to remember is, we think there's going to be a breakthrough, right? We do, the people on this call, we know there's going to be a breakthrough. And it's always more turbulent just prior to the breakthrough.
Yeah.
In stuff that when you get change within your own life, it's always, oh, how am I ever going to survive this? And your head pops up above the water and you think, wow, I'm glad that's behind me, and you move on to the next problem. So, yeah, there's some turbulence around the world, and we would have to expect that. But it's all a part of what's happening and what's going to happen. So the worse it gets, I think, the closer we are to the whole thing popping open, and we can all move forward. That's my view.
I agree. And I think that comes back to, again, if we circle back to the self-governance thing, and Fred will agree with me on this, is that there's a lot of talk out there about there being multiple timelines, and your headspace and your frame of mind and how you view the world and the way you choose to think is going to dictate to a certain extent the world you end up in. If you are looking for a world of trauma and chaos and disaster and et cetera, you'll probably find one. But if you're looking for a world where you actually can build a shed without having to ask anyone's permission except your neighbours, and you're living in a place where you've got, you know, really good neighbours and great friends and clean air and you know, everything is wonderful, then you're probably going to end up somewhere like that. And I don't think that that's particularly a specific religious way of thinking. I think that's just kind of choosing the world you want to be in. And we know that we are far more capable than what we've ever been led to believe as light beings. And, you know, there's been a huge amount of money and time and effort put into suppressing everything that we can do and be and are. So clearly they're very, very frightened of us exercising our sovereign powers. And that doesn't mean just our sovereign powers to build a shed. That means our sovereign powers to be the best that we can be. And I think we need to remember that. You only put a lot of time and effort into suppressing something when you're scared witless of it.
And it's also law of attraction too. You know, what you think about, you bring about. If you focus on something for a certain period of time, you bring that about. So if you want, and you can see the evidence of that when people are having a bad day and they really focus on that, more bad things happen to them. It kind of snowballs during the day. But if you can sort of pivot and go, all right, that happened. What was my experience, or what did I have to learn from that, and be positive, then it nips it in the bud. So it's a little bit law of attraction as well. So what you focus on is what you bring about.
And what you focus on is what you get, Donna, eh? Pretty much. Fred, Sarah told us all that you would agree, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And what Donna said too, you know, what you focus on is what you're going to get, sort of thing. But just revisiting George, gosh, what's his name?
Cavassalis.
Cavassalis, that's the... And he was saying, like, there's 4 timelines or 4 ways of reality that we're living in at the moment. And one is the AI. Another one is you can wind up, if you're going that way, thinking about how good being AI is, or religion, the religious way. And there's also, what have we got? The Star Trek future too. There's another one. So there's 4 ways of thinking. And then we've got people like us who just want to, you know, not upset too many people and sit back and do something positive for ourselves and humanity, you know. They're all different ways of being. So if you're going to be thinking along the lines of, oh, you know, I'm going to fly a fighter and shoot up baddies in the space somewhere, well, damn good chance you're going to wind up on that timeline, and that's all you'll see. And same with AI, religion, and anything else you want to focus on. I think we've all got to start looking, those who want something different, we've got to all start looking at different ways of receiving things, as you say, with the Spanish, what's happened in Spain is obviously a manifestation of a certain thing, and it tends to be the people in that area. We haven't seen anywhere near that sort of stuff happening in Australia. Like, in England with the riots and that, and France, they have their riots, and Holland and so forth. They're all things brought about by mass consciousness. So we've just got to try and, I mean, we're lucky we don't have billions. Well, we've got millions, but only 20 million comparatively to what they've got over there. You know, they've got a lot there, got a lot more driving them towards violence and things. So, yeah, no, I agree with it.
Very good. So, yeah, I think we should all just chill. Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Chill out. But if you want to know what you can do, look at joining the assembly. Look at what you can do in your assembly. I know a lot of people out there are sitting there going, I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. I'm just a housewife, or I'm just whatever. No one is just an anything. Everyone, and I mean every single person that I have met through TASA, and a lot of other people outside of TASA, everyone has. None of us realise how amazing our stories are. None of us do. We all think we've just had an ordinary life, and then other people listen to our stories and they go, oh my God, that's amazing. And we all have things that we can contribute. We all have areas of knowledge. We all have skills and experience that we can put forward. And even if it is just, you know, I mean, one of the first things we had here on Victoria is people said, I can't do much, but, you know, I could take names and money at the door. Do you know how much effort that takes to take names and money at the door? That's not an easy gig, but it has to be done. It has to be done. So if that's what you can do, do it. Go along and volunteer. Have an opinion. Listen to what's going on. And if you think something, I sound like the TV thing, if you see something, say something. But if you think something, if people are talking about something in your local area, and you might go fishing at that lake or creek every week, and you know, because you've seen it and you've experienced it, that there's a huge problem with a certain aspect of that, tell them. If they're thinking about doing something, so you do realise that there's this, because they might not realise. And you would be then the experts in that subject matter that's there in the room at the time. It doesn't matter that you don't have qualifications or anything, you've got lived experience. And lived experience is massive. So if you want to choose a life that you can be the boss of yourself and your family, and, well, you know, have your family be sovereign, and out from under these 1,000,001 stupid laws, help out on the assembly, because the sooner we can get this thing stood up, the sooner we can start giving instructions to the service providers, aka government organisations and government corporations, in how we want our lives to be lived.
That's it. That's exactly it, Sarah. And don't worry about what you think you don't know. We all know little bits and pieces, right? Some of us have been around this space for quite a while, and we've got some knowledge. We didn't know all that much when we started either. Some of us, it's been a gradual growth, gradual learning. But don't worry about what you don't know. There'll be plenty of people to help you through that. All you got to do is turn up and ask the question. Somebody will always help you. We probably should wind this back, eh? Anybody got anything to add? Anybody got any last minutes? Ray, you don't want to tell a joke or anything?
No.
Not this week.
Huh?
Well, before we go, I should say so thank you guys for coming on today. And I know it was a little bit of a different talk, but hopefully it's given people a bit more insight into TASA and to the assembly and to what we are as opposed to what we're not. We are a bunch of simple men and women who just want to live our lives pretty much free of too much interference. And the best way to do that is to get into our assemblies and start building the assemblies. And that means just doing what we need to get what we want done. It does not mean recreating what they've done on the side of the country.
Go cooler. I think you've got a hot mic there.
And The other thing is that we've got Jody Lowe on the call next week. So that'll be interesting because Jody, for those of you that don't know, Jody has done, what hasn't Jody done? Huge advocate for the freedom movement across the board. Is very, very good at bringing different groups of people together. And it'll be really good to talk to him and find out where he's at the moment. So looking forward to that chat with Jody.
Yep.
And as usual, if anyone's got any comments or anything they want to say, seagull4451@outlook.com will find me. If you've got any questions or any comments about anything that's been said today, feel free to reach out. Like I said, we don't get it right all the time. We'll get it wrong sometimes, and we will amend a record as we go.
Of course we will.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody, for your input, your energy, your thoughts, for taking part. And with that being said, I'm now going to hit the little red button. Bye-bye.
Thank you.